All right, so to kind of pick up where we left off, we had just written our number in expanded form. So we wrote 64 and 516 thousandths in expanded form. And so I'm going to show you how we could also write it as a fraction. So if we write this as a fraction, there's a way to write it just as a fraction and then also as a fraction in expanded form. So this would be written as 64, and then this part after the decimal, this represents the fraction part. So this would be 516 over 1,000. Now, if I were to write this one right here, 64 and 51 hundredths, it's going to be 64 and then 51 over 100. And then here, we've got 64 as the whole number, and then 5 tenths, because it's in the tenths place. So whatever the last digit, that will determine our denominator of these. So now, if we write this as a fraction, this first part's going to stay the same. So I'm going to still have 6 times 10. The whole number part stays the same. And then 4 times 1. Then now I've got 5 times 1/10. So instead of writing this as a decimal, I can write 5 times 1/10 as a fraction. And then here, 1 times 1/100th, I can write that as a fraction. So 1 over 100. And then 6 times 1,000th, I can write it as a fraction. So sometimes you may be asked to write it in expanded form as a fraction or as a decimal. So these are the two different types. So remember, standard form is the number form. Then if I were to write this out in words, that would be considered word form. And then I've got my fraction form, where I've written it like this. If I had just 5 tenths, then I can put a 0 as the whole number, and then I put a 5 in the tenths place. So that's what 5 tenths would look like as a decimal, but then as a fraction, it's going to be 5 over 10. So that's what 5 tenths looks like as a fraction and as a decimal. And, sometimes I'll leave off the 0 at the front, but that shows that there's not any whole number parts to the number. It's just going to be the fraction or the decimal part of the number. All right, so now we're going to look at comparing some of these numbers. So what I mean by comparing is greater than, less than, or equal to. So let's say that I had 6 tenths, and I want to compare that to 31 hundredths. So when I'm comparing this, if I'm thinking about whether it's greater than, less than, or equal to, I'm going to look at each place value. So both of these have 0 as the whole number. So now I'm going to look at the next largest place value, which would be the tenths place. So because this one has 6 tenths and this one only has 3 tenths, 6 tenths is going to be more than 31 hundredths. So 6 tenths is greater than 31 hundredths. Now, if you look at that, you may not think that that is true because this one has more digits. But 6 tenths is worth more than 3 tenths. And I could write an equivalent form of 6 tenths by saying 600 or 60 hundredths is what this would now be. So 60 hundredths. And now I could have the same number of digits. So 60 hundredths and 6 tenths are going to be equal to each other. Now, if I had 6 hundredths, if I had it like this, that's 6 hundredths. So 6 hundredths is actually going to be less than 60 hundredths. Or if I didn't have the 0 here, I don't have to put the 0. I could just put 6 tenths. So, and I wrote this the wrong way. It should have been 6 tenths, or 6 hundredths, sorry about that, is going to be less than the 6 tenths. And I can't remember for sure if I had that the right way to begin with or not.